Hello everyone, my name is Treka and you're watching 963, and today we're with the amazing Janice from the United States, and she's a famous activist here in Syria, very loved, and she's visiting Syria now for the 6th time, I understand.
That's
How are
correct.
you and welcome to Syria?
Well, thank you so much, and I'm thrilled to be on the program, and I love the work that you all are doing to show people the true Syria and what's going on here.
Well, thank you so much. We also love your work here. So how long have you been here in Damascus?
In Syria, this trip, about 2.5 weeks, I guess.
That's cool.
And in Damascus, about half of that time.
Yeah, I remember we met maybe in March of this year, like a
Yes,
couple of months ago.
April.
April this year, and things in Damascus were totally different
Yes.
from now. So can you tell everyone what is the difference you've seen in Damascus?
Sure, and it's huge, and it's wonderful because all of my previous trips, this is my 6th trip, I love staying in the old city, and of course the mortars were a constant part of that, and so that kind of overshadowed everything. And now this trip, to not have any of that and to see so many of the checkpoints taken away, although I miss the soldiers here in the old city, but the atmosphere and the feeling is just so much more relaxed, I think hopeful for the future, and it's just thrilling to be here now. It feels kind of surreal, actually, to not have that aspect going on anymore, and I'm very thankful that the Syrian people here are not experiencing that.
Yeah, we are really also very happy that we can now finally live in peace without fearing for our lives. I know that you've been here in Syria, you visited Syria for 6 years. You've visited also many cities.
Yes.
Out of all the cities, which is your favorite? What is your favorite city here?
Well, I've been coming for 3 years and 6 trips, so I try to come every 6 months. And it surprises people that my favorite city is Homs.
Wow.
I love the people, I love everywhere. So don't get me wrong, I love every different city and town and village. They all have their unique characters. But for some reason, I feel like if I were Syrian, I would be Homsy.
Wow, can you tell us like why? What's so special in Homs?
I think there's a certain rawness or kind of a wildness to it, and I just feel more at home there. It's hard to explain, but I love walking the streets in Homs. I think part of it is because half of it is so destroyed. And then you have the other half that's just really, I find, a very vibrant place, very alive. People walking around at all hours of the day and night, and loud music, and I just love the vibe there.
Yeah, and the good news is that now the destroyed parts in Homs is getting rebuilt, and they're trying to beautify the destroyed areas and rebuild it.
Yes.
So this is like a good progress in Syria.
Oh, it's excellent. In the old souk, especially in the old city, a lot of restoration has occurred, and this last time in the souk, I noticed so many more shops open and shops getting more and more upscale. There's a broader spectrum of shopping there, and restaurants and hotels being restored. So it's very encouraging.
Now I understand that you're leaving very soon, unfortunately, of course. What is this next city you would like to visit in your next
An
visit to
interesting
here?
question. I have visited many places in Syria. I have not yet been to Safita, which I would love to do. I particularly like focusing on liberated areas and the change that occurs over time there. So I was in Deir ez-Zor a year ago. I would love to go back there at some point. I was in El Mayadeen. I'd love to see what's happening there. Palmyra, to just kind of be an observer on a consistent basis of the progress and the restoration of society there.
Yeah.
So anywhere, I'll go anywhere.
That would be amazing. And of course, you're always welcome whenever you visit Syria.
Thank you. I feel very welcome here, and this is one of the reasons why so many of us want to come back again and again, is because the people are just so welcoming and friendly and gracious to us.
Yeah, well, thank you. Now we have to talk about now your work. Now, I know you're an activist and you're a truth seeker. You've been visiting Syria to see what's happening in Syria personally, to not, I also noticed that you don't take your information from the mainstream media. You like to come here and see it by yourself. So, where are the places that you went in your visit now, and what did you see? I saw that you posted on your page online that you met with a sniper from
al-sham.
Ahrar al-Sham.
Yes.
How was that?
You know, it was disturbing, to be honest with you. And you're right, I don't look to mainstream media for news in any way, shape, or form. In fact, that's one of the reasons I started coming to Syria, was because I saw that the media reporting was so terrible. I mean, it was so obviously one-sided. So meeting with that sniper was a kind of, it felt almost like a graduation ceremony, because I have a certain Ahrar al-Sham, particularly, like I was near al-Zara village when they massacred that village. I had met with the survivors of the bombing of the Kafria Bua people that were leaving those villages. And so that particular group has a lot of focus for me because, you know, it's clearly a terrorist group, but my country refuses to designate it as such and has been helping them. So to meet with this guy who was working with them, and you know, it was actually a very emotional experience for me, and I was glad when it was over. But I felt it was necessary to help people in America and the West understand first what these so-called moderate groups have been about, and what is motivating some of these people to join these groups, and how that has affected Syria in general. And I felt that it was necessary to share that dimension of the story. But my preference is always to really focus on what is hopeful and what is positive here. One of the most dramatic things that I experienced this trip was meeting a family that had moved back to their house in one of the truly demolished areas of Homs. You know, it's just them. They're the first family to move back. And that was a profound experience because they were so welcoming and, you know, invited us for coffee and everything. And I just thought that they were so brave to move back there. So that's the kind of reporting that I really love to do.
Well, you know, when you were talking about Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, these terrorist groups, you know, that's what we always try to tell the people living outside that don't know what is really going on, that we do have many different terrorist groups that were fighting here in Syria. You have ISIS, you have Al-Qaeda, you have Jabhat al-Nusra, you have Tahrir al-Sham, you have the Free Syrian Army, Jaish al-Islam. Like, they're all different groups with different names, but they all share the same Wahhabi ideology.
Yes.
This is what they all have in similar. They all want to overthrow Syria's secular government, and they all want to implement Sharia law. Like, for an example, just a couple of days ago, the so-called moderate opposition, they decided to change their opposition flag from the 3 stars to the Shahada statement, which is the same statement you would find in the Saudi Arabian flag, the same thing you will find in Daesh flag and the extremist groups flag. So before they were hiding it, before they were trying to tell the people that we are moderates, we are freedom fighters, but right now it's like clear to everyone. They don't want to lie anymore, and they're just making it clear to everyone that we are extremists, just like the rest of the groups.
Yes, and you know, of course, to those of us who have been tracking this, that's been obvious since, well, for me, 2012. I know for a lot of Syrians since the very beginning. But as you say, they're not even trying to hide it anymore. And I think this is an important point for Westerners to understand why Syrians call all these groups terrorists. It doesn't mean that every fighter went around beheading children, for example. Although the atrocities have been almost unspeakable in so many instances. But it's that overall ideology of wanting to change the basic culture of Syria, which is this beautiful multicolor, multidimensional tapestry
Exactly.
of all these different groups, of freedom for women, I mean, empowerment for women, the freedom to have whatever religion you want or no religion, you know, the freedom to just get along in peace. They want to change all that and paint it over one black, flat color. And this is why they're terrorist groups, because they're literally trying to behead your culture.
Exactly. Yeah, and we don't have any problem with anyone being against the Syrian government. But if you want to be an opposition, you have to have like a political party, and you have to be political when you're opposing the government. As soon as you start holding weapons and joining groups and killing and destroying public property and kidnapping, you are immediately considered a terrorist. You're not considered a opposer anymore. You're a terrorist. In every country, in every dictionary, this is the definition of a terrorist.
Yes.
So this is what we're trying to make clear with everyone. Like, we are fighting people that are holding weapons, that are killing, that are destroying, that are kidnapping. Like, for an example, when about the massacre of Suwaida a couple of months ago, when they kidnapped more than 20 children and women.
Yes.
But you know, thankfully, a couple of days ago, they have been rescued by the Syrian army, and even the Syrian president went to the city of Suwaida, and they greeted him and they celebrated with him.
That
after.
was wonderful, seeing those pictures and videos.
All the Syrians were happy, and they were all celebrating that finally, like, we were able to get back those kidnapped women and children. Because most of the people don't know, but these people that got kidnapped, they entered through the al-Tanf area, which is an area under the supervision of the American military, and they weren't stopped. They entered houses 4 a.m. in the morning, broke down the doors, killed all the men that they saw in the houses, and kidnapped women and children. And every couple of weeks they would release a video of like beheading a kid or a woman. So it was very terrible and a tragedy, but like thankfully we were able to get back most of them back to their city and back to their homes. So you can see that there is a difference in Syria, security-wise, from the last time you visited till today.
Yes, you know, it's very, what is the term I'm looking for? It doesn't feel natural actually now, you know, but I'm so thrilled for the Syrian people, because I just, the ability to have safety and stability, those are freedoms that are really important to everybody's life. And when I see the stability and safety that have come to liberated areas, and there have been so many now, that when you look at a map today versus even a year ago or 2 years ago, it's astounding how different it is. That it's like civilization has been restored. And I'll never forget Heather Nauert, the State Department spokeswoman, when President Assad had driven himself to Eastern Ghouta.
Alone in the car.
And she was like, he acts like he lives in a normal country. And, you know, people don't realize how normal Syria is. This is a real testimony to the Syrian people. I think that there has been a true, sheer willpower decision to remain civilized and to live a civilized life while all of this nightmare, hellish experience was going on. I don't know if there's another group of people that could have done what you did.
And this shows how much the West and the mainstream media are liars, because if anybody wants to believe what they say, that means the majority of the Syrians hate the president. So how could the president drive alone in the car in the main city and not fearing for his life and nobody attacking him? And in fact, when people are seeing him, they're celebrating him.
Exactly.
So this just shows how the mainstream media has it all twisted.
Yes, and they you know, that's their job, is to, the old phrase is war sells news, so news sells wars.
Yes.
And they're very good at it, unfortunately.
Yeah, to them, you know, like war is a profitable business.
Yes.
To them, war is profit. That's how they look at it. They don't think about the normal people, how their lives are getting damaged, whether it's by the rockets or by the terrorists they're sending or by the economic sanctions that they're putting on the Syrian people. Like, they don't really think about the Syrian people and how they are suffering, you know. You would never find any Syrian person who hasn't lost a loved one or a family member or a close friend in this war, because like every Syrian family has lost a family member. But the good news is that things are really, really improving. Now all that is remaining is the city of Idlib.
Yes.
If you remember the last time we met, Damascus countryside still had terrorist groups. Dera still had terrorist groups, Netra, Deir ez-Zor, and now all these cities got liberated.
Yes.
And now all that we are focusing on is hopefully Idlib. If we can like solve this city, and Syria will get back on its feet, and we will start focusing more on rebuilding the country and rebuilding the economy and like making it more alive.
I think an important point is, for example, in Aleppo, I met with Faris Shahabi, who's one of the most dynamic people I've ever met in my life. And he was talking, you know, the rebuilding there is quite extraordinary. The Aleppians, of course, are very industrious, hardworking people, and they have just attacked rebuilding. But it's basically all been done by Syrians with very little or no foreign investment. You know, these are organic projects, and we can walk around the streets and see a father and his son just clearing rubble.
Yes.
You know, one bag at a time. But over time, it adds up to be a profound change. So I think it's extraordinary that so much rebuilding is happening. The war is still going on.
Yeah.
As you said, in Idlib, there's still the illegal U.S. occupation in the northeast. And, you know, those problems will get solved, I'm sure. But even though that's still going on, the rebuilding is starting, the reconstructing, the building of schools, the reconstructing of hospitals, and all of this is happening today. And this is what I want people in America especially to see.
Yes. If there was something that you would like to tell the American people that are watching us right now, like what is the biggest misconception they have about Syria? Like what is something that you need to tell the American people about Syria that they don't know?
Well, they don't know much of anything. You know, there are a lot of people that are awake, but most people don't have the first clue. I would say what I want them to know is that Syria is an awesome country. It's an amazing place, deep history, fascinating culture, great diversity, empowered women who are everything from the vice president to jet pilots to doctors, physicists, everything. You can walk down the street and there'll be churches and mosques and bars and nightclubs and museums and art galleries. You know, Syria is like a person that has it all. It's not that there aren't problems here, but the problems are not a brutal dictator. The problems are not a civil war. The problems that are the main problems here is that the West decided that Syria was next on the list to take over, just like we did Iraq and just like we did Libya and just like we've been trying to do Afghanistan. It's just the next on the list. And we determined to try to destroy all of this wonderful stuff that's here. And so, you know, I guess the basic message is for Americans that America is the aggressor. Syria is the defender. This is your country. Syria is for Syrians. What happens here is none of our business. We need to get out. We need to end the sanctions and allow you all to determine your own future. This is my basic message.
Well, it's a lovely message, and thank you so much for that. And after listening to what you said, like the main reason why they failed, the Western countries and even the Middle Eastern countries like the Saudi Arabians and the Qatari and the Turkey, like the main reason why they failed in Syria is because the Syrian people who had awareness. They saw what happened in Iraq, and they saw what happened in Libya, and they were like, we don't want the same thing that happened in Iraq and Libya to happen here in Syria. Like, look at the difference between Libya when in the Gaddafi days and Libya now. Like, Libya now, it's full of terrorist groups. They're selling slaves. If you look at Iraq till today, they're still recovering from the war that they faced, or Afghanistan. So, like, we see that any country that the West puts its hands on, they destroy it. So that's the last thing we want. So we were aware that, okay, there are terrorist groups here in Syria. They are funded by this country, by this other country, and most of them are not Syrians, and they're holding weapons. Okay, so we were aware of this because we learned from the mistakes of other countries.
Yes.
So that is what helped us.
Yeah, I think there's a perception in the West that Syria is some kind of Iron Curtain country, and that you only know what the government tells you to know through authorized channels and stuff. They don't even realize that you have full access to the internet.
Yeah.
You're watching CNN, you're watching BBC, you're watching Fox News, you hear what the State Department is saying. You know everything of what's going on. And I call it, you know, the savvy of Syrians. Syria was coveted and fought over by the Egyptians and the Hittites. You know, all throughout history. People have wanted to control you because there is so much beauty and natural resources, and geographically it's a key position. So I say Syrians can spot an imperialist, you know, from 5,000 miles away trying to come to take over their country.
Yeah, that's very true. What else have you done in Syria? Like, after visiting the sniper and going to Aleppo, what other things have you done?
Well, I think, you know, going to Aleppo is always an amazing experience. And one of the best parts was being able to stay in a hotel, a boutique hotel that had just reopened in the old souk. So this is a beautiful place, restored. It had been inhabited by terrorists throughout the war. They had done a lot of damage, of course, over the last 2 years. It's been refurbished and restored. And to spend the night there, you know, there's still, electricity isn't really available too much. Of course, there was no Wi-Fi, but it just felt like such a touch with history to be in the souk, you know, where caravans have come and gone and all those things. That was really kind of a romantic experience in that way. And, you know, this trip really I focused on just spending a lot of quality time with people.
Yeah.
And hearing their stories. I spent a lot of time with a young man who was a soldier, volunteer soldier. He'd been asked to be assigned to the old city. And literally we just went street to street, and he's pointing out, okay, that building was ours, that building was theirs, and just that crazy fighting that had gone on for so long, street by street, house by house, was fascinating. And one of the most poignant memories I have of this trip is he took us to where he and his commander drink mate every day. This is where, that was kind of their barracks there in the old city. And so we're sitting there drinking mate, and a group of young schoolgirls comes in, and they say, can we use this spot to practice a song? And I mean, I was practically in tears, because so many men died retaking that land. And that's what they were dying for. And so those young girls, happy with smiles, they're sitting there and they're singing these wonderful songs about Syria. And it was just like, it's hard to explain. Unforgettable moment.
Yeah, it's unfortunately in every city and every town has experienced this. I want to ask you, are you happy that the American military is in Syria?
I'll try to use nice language. No, the Americans are in Syria 100% illegally, according to international law and our own laws. We have no business being here. We had no business manufacturing this war. We had no business sponsoring terrorist groups. We have no business stealing Syrian land and Syrian resources like the oil. This is a direct violation of everything that we're supposed to be. You know, John Quincy Adams said America doesn't go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. This is not our, we're supposed to be only an example, you know, with our ideals. But we never live up to those ideals. We're too busy going around the world and trying to control everything. So no, I'm very unhappy. We're lying to our servicemen and women. We are lying to the, you know, our government is lying to the American people. We're spending billions of dollars. And the only thing we're accomplishing is something that's directly against humanity and civilization. There's no justification for us being here.
You know, when I watch the American media, I always find that there is this divide between the Republicans and the Democrats. They're always like fighting each other. I want to ask you, do you see, as an American citizen, do you see that there is any difference in the foreign policy of the American president, whether he was a Republican or Democrat? Is there a difference in the American foreign policy?
No, virtually none. You know, there are differences of degree perhaps among some. There are differences in methodology. Like Obama didn't send troops over, but he sent drones and bombs and money to terrorists and things like that. So essentially, no, especially for the victims of it. It all looks the same. Bombing, death, destruction, chaos, violence.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, the American taxpayers are footing the bill for trillions of dollars. Our servicemen and women, the leading cause of death is suicide. PTSD is an epidemic. Drug addiction also. Many of our veterans are turning to crime. You know, and yet there's still this rah-rah support our troops. Well, we don't support our troops. We don't take care of our veterans. We treat them like garbage. And we send them off to wars for liars and greedy
Politicians and corporations.
Politicians. So,
yeah.
And foreign governments, you know. So it's very frustrating as an American, and I'm ashamed of our foreign policy. It's grisly and heinous, you know.
Yeah, I also feel like I don't think any American soldier is happy that he's living abroad, you know, far away from his country. And you know, we were talking before about the problem that America's having with the Mexican border. I always tell them that if you guys are always complaining about the Mexican borders, about the criminals and the smugglers and all these illegal immigrants entering, if you guys really are having this problem, why don't you bring back all your American armies that are in the Middle East and put them in the Mexican border? That way they will keep the border safe and be close to their families. Isn't that a brilliant idea?
Exactly. In fact, we could have a soldier every 6 inches, you know, if we did that and really protect those borders. And we wouldn't have to protect the borders as much if we didn't go around destroying these people's countries and economies that forces them to be refugees in the first place. You know, it's all, to me, it's a self-defeating cycle, because we're literally creating enemies, we're creating refugees, we're creating economic devastation in our own country. You know, when are people going to wake up and say this is unacceptable?
One more question. Hillary Clinton, a couple of days ago, like she was flirting with the idea that she might run for presidency in 2020. What do you think of that?
You know, I think she's like a zombie that just won't die. It's, you know, for someone of her experience and background, to have lost that election to someone like Donald Trump, that so many people were, you know, outright
They were not even taking him seriously.
And didn't take him seriously. It just goes to show you that most people know she's a mobster, and honestly, in my opinion, a monster.
Yeah, even here in Syria, like we knew that Hillary Clinton is just going to continue the same exact foreign policy. So yeah.
Yeah, the hope was, you know, we had one known variable, Hillary Clinton, and we knew what she would do, and you had an unknown variable.
Exactly.
So you had to go with the unknown variable.
Exactly, yeah, that's what I feel. So do you think the divide in America will one day heal, or is it just very bipolar?
You know, social media has gone far in, I think, helping to heal that divide, and in some ways has restored something of adult discussion, even though some of it, most of it is crazy and just flinging insults at one another and calling each other stupid. But there's a core group there that really is seeking to resurrect the idea of adult discussion between people of different viewpoints and learning from one another. And so it's really important to encourage people to be on social media and to network with people that are rational and knowledgeable, even if they don't, maybe they don't agree with you on a lot of things, but listen to their point of view. You know, we need to be actively online and talking to one another.
Yeah, I also advise most of my followers on Facebook that if you really want to know the truth about Syria, you should follow the people that are in Syria, that are investigating in Syria, seeing things like personal, like yourself, like Vanessa Beeley, like Eva Bartlett, these are journalists that are actually saying the truth about Syria. Just because they came to Syria and they're witnessing this and they're going to places that are liberated, they're doing interviews with people from both sides, just like you also do. And it's very, very clear that whenever people like you guys come, you always have the, excuse me, you always have the same opinion at the end of the day.
Yes.
That we are fighting Islamic extremists and jihadists that are funded by the West, and all that they want to do is destroy this country and implement Sharia law on all the Syrian people.
Yes, people say, you know, you're just getting fed a line and you're just repeating it. That's not the case. The reality is so obvious once you get here. The contrast is so stark. I always describe it, there's civilization and barbarism. And you're either, as a human being, on the side of civilization or you're supporting barbarism.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what I think the most important thing we do is getting people in America or Europe to listen to the voices of Syrians. And, you know, you all are the ones who really matter here. And it's your opinions and your knowledge that really counts. And so the only thing I think of serious value that we do is try to funnel, you know, what we're hearing from you guys kind of over there, and also helping people to network with Syrians and to become friends and to ask you all directly. I think that's hopefully something that's been of value to your country.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Janice, for your time,
Great
and we
seeing
hope to see you again soon here in Syria. And whenever you're here, you're always welcome.
Thank you so much. It's always hurts to leave, and I always wait to come back, you know.
You're always welcome whenever you come back. It's your home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.